Welcome to week 7 of TS session of Structure Analysis 1 taught by Professor Amit Shu. I'm Trisha Chakraborty, one of the course teaching assistants. I'm a PhD student at ISC Bangalore. Today we are going to start looking at how to solve indeterminate structures. I'll start with a recap of phase 1 of this course was the first 6 weeks analysis of determinate structures. In week 1 we looked at types of internal forces. There are 4 types: shear force, bending moment, axial force and torsional moment. Then the common classification of elements like beam, trusses and frame elements, and boundary conditions like hinged, roller support, fixed support and all. Structural indeterminacy, there we look briefly at what indeterminacy means. Indeterminacy basically means redundancy in a structure. So all real life structures are indeterminate, but we started with determinate structures because in determinate structures there are only as many unknowns or support reactions as the number of equations available, equilibrium equations. So they're easy, they're relatively easier to analyze because you can solve for the support reactions, and once we have the support reactions, once we have the support reactions we can find out all the responses in all the response types generated in the structure, which is bending moment and shear force for the in the case of beams, and member forces in case of truss. These are the force type responses. So week 2 we looked at idealization of trusses and stability of trusses, but the main focus was on solving the member forces by method of joints and method of sections. Then week 3, 4 and 5 we focused on how to find out the strain or displacement type responses in structures. So principle of virtual force, unit load method to determine displacement in trusses. So all the nodal displacements. If you know all the nodal displacements in a truss, we know the entire deformed configuration. And week 4 and 5 it was about beams. So deflection of beams by elastic curve equation method, moment area method and conjugate beam method. So all of these we have done, all of these methods, bending moment shear force diagram, to how to draw, how to find the member forces of trusses, how to find nodal displacement in truss, and how to find out the deflection profile in beams. All of these start with a common step, that is solving the support reactions. Whenever we have a structure, we solve the support reactions using the equations of equilibrium, and all of the structures we have looked at so far are determinate structures, so we can solve the support reactions straightforward. But and okay, week 6 was a kind of an different kind of topic, influence line diagram, which talks about the loading, talks about the stress response type generated under moving load, under a rolling load. So that even here, even in influence line diagram, solving the support reaction was like the basic first step in all of these. So that is why this phase 2 analysis of indeterminate structures is more critical. The concepts do not change, but if I have, suppose I have a fixed beam, this end is fixed, this end is fixed, so we have three support reactions here, see, three support reactions here, but only three equations of equilibrium. So unless I can solve the support reactions, everything is unknown to me. So, in analysis of indeterminate structures, we first focus on how to solve the support reactions. Week 7, we will look at review of degree of structural indeterminacy, which we have already looked at in the first week to some extent. Introduction to force and displacement methods, Maxwell-Betty's reciprocal theorem, and method of consistent deformations. It is a force method. So there are actually two categories of methods called forced methods or displacement methods. So this week 7, 8 and 9 we look at force methods, and 10, 11 and 12 we look at displacement methods. I think that is how the course is structured, and all of these are about solving indeterminate structures. Okay, so we'll start with structural indeterminacy. Structures that cannot be analyzed using statics or equations of equilibrium only are called indeterminate structures. We will need the equations of equilibrium, but they won't be sufficient. We cannot ignore them. They require other material properties to be solved. Okay, you might have noticed, if you think back now, when we were solving the support reactions of a beam, just suppose a cantilever beam with some loading pattern, did the material property come into question anywhere? It did not. The material, all the geometry property, like only the length of the beam comes into equation, because if there is a tip loading P, then the moment generated at the fixed end of a cantilever beam will be P into L. So the length of the beam is always relevant, but the cross sectional area of the beam, or the Young's modulus, which is a material property, and cross sectional area of a beam, like if this is the beam, then this is the cross section. This width, this depth, or the material property, that is the Young's modulus density, any of those did not come into the question. So in determinate structures, we just can solve support reactions using the loading pattern, the type of boundary condition, and the length of the beam. But in structurally indeterminate problems, we will need some material properties. The degree of indeterminacy is equal to number of unknown reactions minus the number of equations of equilibrium. External indeterminacy and internal indeterminacy total add up to give the total degree of structural indeterminacy. So external indeterminacy, total number of independent support reactions minus total number of available equations of static equilibrium. Internal indeterminacy, which is less important, like generally external indeterminacy equates to degree of structural indeterminacy, total number of internal reactions minus available equations of equilibrium. This internal indeterminacy we'll see as and when we encounter them. These are all externally determinate or indeterminate problems. So anyway, a cantilever beam we know is a determinate structure because there are three support reactions, three equations. This is a propped cantilever. It has a fixed support and a roller support. So there are three plus one, four reactions and three equations. The three equations is of course common in the 2D plane, like common across all problems. You always have three equations of equilibrium. So this is 4 minus 3, 1 degree indeterminate. This is a frame, portal frame with two fixed supports. So 3 plus 3, 6 reactions and 3 equations. Now the fact that number of equations of equilibrium is 3, it is common across trusses, beams and frames. It is a property of the 2D plane itself. It is not a property of the problem. So if this is a 2D plane, this is uh, one equation of equilibrium, that sigma fx equal to 0, sigma fy equal to 0. X and y can be any two mutually perpendicular planes, and another is this moment. If you rotate your hand in the plane, we will get a moment.
Hello, Mara.
Yes. So if you have a plane, you rotate your hand in the plane, then you will see that a moment whose sense is perpendicular to the plane is generated, which is called mz, because if this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, and this is the z-axis. So sigma fx equal to 0, sigma fy equal to 0, sigma mz equal to 0. These equations don't look at whether the structure is a beam or a frame or a whatever. It is always there are always three equations in the 2D plane. So here this is 3 degree indeterminate, and this is another portal frame with two hinge supports. So 2 plus 2, 4 reactions and 3 equations. So 1 degree indeterminate. Okay, and now we'll look at just a the brief overview or definition of these two types of methods, force methods and displacement methods. Force methods are also called compatibility or flexibility methods. So what is the approach here? Redundant forces are chosen as unknowns. Now what are redundant forces? For example, if you look at this propped cantilever, it is a very simple example to understand. So, yeah, so when we are trying to understand what a redundant force is, now if now this fixed support gives us three types of forces. One is a x reaction, one is a y reaction, and one is a moment reaction. And this support at C, this roller support gives only a y reaction. Now if I call this roller is redundant, I remove the roller. I've written there is no roller, no y restraint given at C. The structure is still stable, right? It becomes a cantilever. It has three equations and three support reactions. So I can call this roller, the force generated by this roller, as a redundant force. But that doesn't mean that this is the only possible redundant force. I could also approach it in a different way. For example, suppose I say the roller stays, but I remove the moment restraint at the fixed end. So if from a fixed support I remove the moment reaction, then it becomes what? It has restraint and y restraint, so it becomes a hinge support. So if I remove the moment here, this becomes a hinge support, this becomes a roller support. So it becomes a simply supported beam. That is also a stable determinate structure. So in that case, the moment reaction is a redundant force. So I know that this structure is 1 degree indeterminate, and it is up to me which force I am going to choose as a redundant force. I have to choose only one redundant force here because it is 1 degree indeterminate. 1 degree indeterminate. Similarly, look at this portal frame. It is 3 degree indeterminate because there are three forces here, three reactions here, three reactions here. So I could take away all three of these. I could remove the fixed support entirely. I take away the X force, X reaction, Y reaction, and the moment reaction. Call all of those three my redundant forces, and this would still be a stable structure. That is one possibility. Another possibility is I remove the moment restraint here. I remove the moment restraint here, and from one of those I remove either the horizontal or the vertical force. In that case, it will become a simply supported kind of thing. One will become a hinge, one will become a pin. Sorry, a roller. So that will also be stable. So there are combinations of forces I can choose to be redundant. The number of redundant forces is equal to the number of redundant forces is equal to the degree of structural indeterminacy, that is constant. And then I will have to define I have to define the redundant force and see that when I take that force away, the structure is still stable, right? For example, like one thing you cannot do here is in this prop cantilever, if I take away the horizontal restraint at A, if I make this into a support, some sort of support which only gives a vertical restraint and a moment, then it won't be enough because then there is nothing to stop the horizontal displacement. So the horizontal force reaction here cannot be the redundant force. I have to choose a redundant force such that when I remove that, the structure is still stable. So I hope I could convey that. So that is how we are going to take redundant forces as unknown, as some unknown, and additional equations are obtained by considering the geometric conditions imposed on the deformation of the structure. Compatibility conditions. Okay, now here I also have to define what a compatibility condition is. Now equations of equilibrium are the force related equations, right? Because it says that sigma fx equal to 0, sigma fy equal to 0, sigma mz equal to 0. That means that the overall force things are balanced in a structure. And compatibility conditions are like a dual side of it, like all structures have to satisfy both the equations of equilibrium and also the equations of compatibility. Compatibility means has to do with the continuity in the structure, so that for example, it says that there can be no sudden jump in the displacement and the slope has to be continuous, so that sort of things. So we have compatibility conditions and we will impose those, and to get some additional equations, and then the number of additional equations will be equal to the degree of indeterminacy. So that many redundant forces we want to solve. And the types are method of consistent deformation, virtual load unit load method, virtual work unit load method, strain energy method, method of minimum potential energy, flexibility matrix method. So all of these are all force compatibility or flexibility methods, but in this UG structural analysis course, generally method of consistent deformation alone is studied, and they are applied, I think, in truss beams and frames. So I think this week is let me see. Yeah, and this week we apply it to beams. I think next week we apply to trusses and then to frames. So, and then we will in week 10, about 10, 11, 12, we'll move on to to displacement type methods. So these are displacement equilibrium stiffness methods. So see, each of these terms, force, the analogy of force is displacement. The analogy of compatibility is equilibrium, which I said. So equilibrium and compatibility, all structures have to satisfy both the equilibrium and the compatibility conditions. And flexibility and stiffness are also actually are inverses of each other. You know what stiffness is in the simplest term. In the simplest terms, you just consider a spring mass system or just a spring with stiffness K. So K is the property that resists deformation. As simple as that. The more we try to pull the spring down, the more the resisting force will be. So that is the stiffness of the body. Stiffness of the spring. Similarly, it can be extended to beams. There will be stiffness matrix in case of beams and frames and trusses. And flexibility is the reverse, it's just the opposite of it. So if we write that F equal to kx, right? Force F is applied force, x is the displacement in the spring, and k is the stiffness. So 1 by k is the flexibility. In for a spring, 1 by k is the flexibility. For stiffness matrix, we will see how to find the flexibility matrix if required. So all three of these terms, force, compatibility, flexibility, are three terms for the same method, same class of methods, and displacement, equilibrium, and stiffness are the three terms for the other class of methods. So in the approach in both of these are different. So in displacement methods, the displacement of joints are taken as unknowns, and equilibrium conditions are expressed in terms of these displacements and internal loads. These equations are solved to give the actual joint displacements from which redundant forces can be calculated. So here we start out with assuming the redundant forces to be unknowns, and here we start out as displacements of joints to be unknown, and here the additional equations we get from compatibility conditions, and here the additional equations we get from equilibrium conditions. So you can see the duality here. And the three major methods here are moment distribution, slope deflection, and stiffness matrix method. These three methods are all very important, especially for descriptive exams. And I think week 10 is slope deflection, week 11 is moment distribution method, and week 12 is stiffness matrix method. Those we will look at in good detail. So this is a summary of the display differences which I have just mentioned. Force method, unknowns are taken as internal members, forces or reactions. Displacement method, unknowns are taken as joint displacements. In force methods, to find unknowns, compatibility conditions are written, and in displacement method, to find unknowns, joint equilibrium conditions are written. Number of equations force method is equal to degree of static indeterminacy. Whatever we have learned so far is static indeterminacy. And there is also another thing defined called kinetic indeterminacy. We will look at that later. So displacement methods are used. In displacement methods, the number of equations required is equal to the degree of kinematic indeterminacy. And of course, if the degree of static indeterminacy is smaller, the force methods are suitable because there are less number of unknowns we have to solve. And if degree of static indeterminacy is larger than degree of kinematic indeterminacy, displacement method is suitable. Now we look at this Betty's law. It says that in any structure, the material of which is linear elastic and follow Hooke's law, supports are unyielding and temperature is constant. The external virtual work done by P system of forces P1, P2, P3 during the distortion caused by Q system of forces Q1, Q2, Q3 is equal to the external virtual work done by the P system of forces during the distortion caused by P system of forces. So here basically we define up to two force systems. So this is just in simple beam. Suppose this is the P system of forces. There are 2 point loads here and here, and this is the Q system of forces. There are 2 point loads here and here, and I have the corresponding deflection profiles in both the cases. So in this y1 and capital Y1 and capital Y2 are the deflections of displacement caused due to the P system of forces at these points specifically, at where Q1 and Q2 is applied, and similarly small y1 and small y2 are the opposite. So the virtual work done by P system of forces is given by P1 small y1, P2 small y2, because for this deflection profile P1 and P2 are the virtual forces, and for this deflection profile Q1 and Q2 are the virtual forces. And the virtual work done by Q system of forces is given by Q1 capital Y1, Q2 capital Y2. Just see there's a crossover here. According to Betty's law, P1 small y1 plus P2 small y2 is equal to Q1 capital Y1 plus Q2 capital Y2. Examples, these again, this Maxwell, the Betty's law and Maxwell Betty's law is is useful for competitive exams like GATE. You are almost sure to get a question from there, I think. And if you try to solve it from first principles, you will be able to do it. But if you know this theorem, if you can apply it correctly, you will just take one step. So in a cantilever beam shown in given figure, delta 2 is deflection under x due to load W1 at y, and delta 1 is the deflection under y due to load W2 at x. So this is a very direct application of the theorem. So we write down the virtual work done by W1 during deflection caused by W2 is W1 into delta 1, and virtual work done by W2 during deflection caused by W1 is W2 into delta 2. So these two are equal. So the ratio delta 1 by delta 2 is W2 by W1. The beam shown in figure carries a load of 30 kN and 40 kN at points x and y, and produces a deflection 8 mm at z. To produce deflections 8 mm and 5 mm at x and y respectively, the load required at z would be, so here x and the one system of load, the P system of loading is the 30 at x and 40 at y. and the q system of force will be an unknown force at z, such that at x there is 8 mm deflection and at y there will be 5 mm deflection. So according to Betti's theorem, wz into 8, because here for the p system of forces the deflection at z is 8, so wz into 8 is equal to 30 into 8 plus 40 into 5, so we get wz here. And Maxwell-Betty's reciprocal theorem is a special case of Betty's law in which P is equal to Q. The system is not the same, like P is applied at one point and Q is applied at a separate point, but the magnitudes are same. For example, in a beam or structure, the deflection at any point D due to load W at any other point C is the same as deflection at C due to the same load applied at D. That is what happens, right? Because if this is W into D, delta D is equal to W into delta C here, so delta D is equal to delta C. So this just means that exactly what this statement says, if I apply a force W at C, the magnitude of deflection at D is equal to the magnitude of deflection at C if I apply the same load at D. This is also very important for the competitive MCQ type exams. Find deflection at distance L2 from fixed end when load P is applied at free end. So now, of course, using conjugate beam method, moment area method, elastic deflection method, you can find out the deflection at C. But we are using a special method here. According to Maxwell's reciprocal theorem, the deflection at B due to load P applied at C will be equal to the, I want the deflection at C when load P is applied at B. So let me find out the reverse instead. I will put a load P at C and find out the deflection at B. So delta BC is deflection of B when loaded at C, and delta CB is deflection at C when load is at B. Applying load P at C, that will be easier because if I apply a force P here, AC acts as a cantilever beam. So the deflection delta C is equal to the tip deflection formula of cantilever beam, which is PL cube by 3 EI. So P L by 2 cube by 3 EI. This is one component, and now there is some slope generated. There is also a formula of slope at the tip of cantilever beam, which is equal to PL square by 2 EI. Now, up to AC, there has been a parabolic deformation. Then some slope has been generated, and since there is no slope, no applied load in the CB portion, this acts as a straight line deformation now. So this deflection at C plus the slope at C into this remaining length is equal to the total deflection. So PL L by 2 cube by 3I plus PL L by 2 square by 2EI into L by 2. So this is the uh, formula. This is the answer we get. Okay. Now we will go into method of consistent deformation, force method. Are there any doubts so far? I'll just wait for 2 minutes. Okay. Now, directly taking redundant reaction forces as unknown and applying compatibility condition to solve them. That is the basic concept. Consider a propped cantilever subjected to UDL over entire span as shown here. So A is the fixed end, B is the propped end like the roller, and there is a W per unit length UDL applied. For the propped cantilever, the degree of static indeterminacy is number of reactions minus 2. Okay, one thing we do here is sometimes, since in beams there is no axial displacement, we remove that the entire x dimension displacement completely. So sigma fx equal to 0, I ignore that equation. So I say that there are effectively two equations of equilibrium, and similarly the horizontal force reaction provided by this fixed end also we ignore. So we can say that there are only two support reactions here and one here. So 2 plus 1, and the total equation of equilibrium is minus is 2. So anyway, we'll end up with the same answer. You can always assume 3 and take this as 3 also. Like there are 3 reactions here. You will end up with the same answer and there will be no harm done. So the above beam is statically indeterminate to first degree. So shear force and bending moment at any section cannot be obtained using equations of static equilibrium alone. Because if you can't solve the support reactions, how are you even going to start? Now we considered the reaction RB as redundant, and as I said, and we remove the restraint offered by RB. Then remaining cantilever. Now if I remove the RB, it becomes a cantilever beam. So it's a statically determinate, which is called statically determinate structure, which is called the primary structure. So this cantilever with a UDL is my primary structure now, and I could also do it in another way. Like as I said, we could remove the moment restraint here, and we could call this the primary structure, which is a simply supported beam. Now, if I consider the cantilever to be the primary structure, then this becomes a cantilever. Now, if you by using the linear like superposition principle, we split the main structure. We split the original structure into two. One is the cantilever without the redundant force, and the UDL here, and another is the cantilever with no extra loading, like no load. The loading has already been accounted for in the primary structure. So in the secondary structure, there is only this redundant force and the support reaction. So this support is there in both, and this RB is here. Since at B there is unyielded support, so at B we have a roller support. And what does a roller support say? That I am not going to allow vertical deflection in at the point where the roller is. So the net deflection at B has to be zero somehow. So I imagine that first there is no force at B. I imagine it's a cantilever. I put a UDL, it deforms. Some deformation is generated. Now I say that I have another structure where there is no load, but where there is an upward force applied at the tip, and it is deflected upwards. So the downward deflection in the cantilever and the upward deflection in the second structure have to algebraically add up to zero. So since at B there is an unyielded support, hence net vertical deflection at B will be zero. This is the compatibility condition. This is what compatibility condition says, that the there has to be has to be a deflectional consistency in the structure. Even if I remove the redundant force, I cannot pretend that that there will be some net deflection at B, because I know for a fact that there is a roller there. So there is no vertical deflection there. So delta B is equal to zero. So we apply the simple formulas, like for a cantilever beam, we know that the tip deflection is WL cube by ATI, and here L to the power 4 by ATI, and here due to a tip loading at the tip of a due to a point loading at the tip of a cantilever beam, it is PL cube by 3 EI, so REL cube by 3 EI, and equating this to algebraically equating this to 0, RB is 3 by 8 WL. So I have got the redundant force. Okay. So now if I have the redundant force, what I can do is I can treat these two as, like, I can treat the original structure as the summation of this structure and this structure. So the BMD and SFD diagrams can be drawn by superimposing the bending moment and shear force diagram of the primary structure. So the shear force diagram of a cantilever beam under UDL is this, and the shear force diagram of this structure with no load, with a tip loading of 3 by 8 WL, is a straight line like this. So when I superimpose this, we get a triangle which is shifted to the down, shifted to the bottom. This triangle is shifted by 3 by 4 WL to the bottom. And bending moment diagram also for UDL, with cantilever under UDL, we have a 2 degree curve, and for this we have a straight line. So again, when we superimpose those, we have a net diagram. You don't get the exact, like, you don't get the exact equation of this, but you know the nature, how the nature will look like. So this is the concept of the force method of consistent deformation. We identify how many redundant reactions we have, and we remove them from the structure to get, like, from the structure we pretend it is not there, to get a primary structure which is determinate and hence solvable. And then I draw a secondary structure where the redundant force is the only force acting on the structure, and I have to find out which compatibility condition needs to be satisfied, which was the compatibility condition being violated if I remove that redundant force. Okay, now we look at the other aspect of this, like the primary structure we could have considered, to see how the to for the sake of completeness. If we consider moment at A as redundant in the analysis as Prof cantilever, then we split it into a simply supported beam with UDL, and the se- and the secondary structure will be a simply supported beam with an applied moment, an externally applied moment, And what will the compatibility condition be? It will be that the net slope at A has to be zero because it was a fixed support, and we know that when at a fixed support the slope of a beam is zero. However, that is not true for simply supported beam. So for a simply supported beam under UDL, there will be some slope generated at A, but I have a but the moment reaction should be such that it counterbalances that force, that slope, and it becomes zero. So since end A in actual structure is fixed, hence at end A net rotation or slope will be zero. So that is the compatibility condition here. WL cube by 24 EI from the first structure plus MAL by 3 EI is equal to 0. So moment at A is minus WL square by 8. So this minus indicates that I had originally assumed this moment to be clockwise, but it is actually anti-clockwise. So negative sign indicates MA is just opposite as we assume. That is see, I cannot, before solving the structure, I cannot always predict what the direction of the redundant force is. So just we go back to the old trick. We just assume some direction, and whatever answer we get, we interpret it algebraically. If I end up with a positive answer, it means that the direction or sense I had assumed is correct, and if I end up with a negative answer, it means that just I have to make it opposite. Like if I assumed upward redundant force and get a negative answer, it means the actual reaction was downwards. It is simple. Shear force diagram for bending like SFD for you can simply supported beam with UDL is a straight line like this, and for a moment applied here is a straight line, so we get it like this. The bending moment diagram also, it is, we know that it's a parabola with tip top maximum value is WL square by 8, and for this it is a straight line, so it becomes and this is positive, this is negative. So from this parabola you have to subtract these values. You can sometimes just draw it by superimposing. It is, as it is implied, that it means that these values have to be subtracted from this parabola. You cannot physically calculate that, like a parabola minus a straight line is a parabola, but it is not easy to draw. So steps we'll summarize. We find the degree of indeterminacy. We choose statically determinate and stable primary structure. Stability is here is important because we have to choose the redundant force in such a way that removing it does not make the structure unstable. Identify the redundance and compute. Okay, I have to add here that just because the structure is 1 degree indeterminate does not mean that all of the individual support reactions are redundant. As I said that for a prop cantilever, if I remove the horizontal restraint, it makes the structure unstable because there is no horizontal restraint in the entire structure. So that horizontal force I cannot choose as redundant. I have to choose any of the vertical forces or a moment support. Identify the redundance and compute displacement of primary structure subjected to external loading and redundance separately at those points where conditions of compatibility exist. Solve the redundance using conditions of compatibility and plot BMT and SFD by superimposing effects of redundant and given loading on the primary structure. So here there are some examples. There is a fixed beam. So for a fixed beam, I actually have three redundant forces, but since the beam has only vertical loading, I ignored the horizontal reactions. So I could do it in two way. I could remove the moment reaction at A and B and make the primary structure simply supported, or I could remove both the forces at B and make it a cantilever beam, which is what has been done here. So it's a cantilever beam plus another cantilever beam with RB here and a moment here. Like it has three components. One is for each redundant force, we have to draw a separate secondary structure. The primary structure is a cantilever beam with P at tip. There is one secondary structure which is a cantilever beam with RB at the tip, and another secondary structure which has MB moment at the tip. So the deflection here plus the deflection here plus the deflection here, all three have to add up to be zero, and the slope here and the slope here and the slope here have to add up to be zero. So I get two compatibility conditions, and I have two equations, two unknowns also. So del theta b has to be zero and delta b has to be zero. So that is what is being done here. This is all very simple because it's just a simple cantilever beam. You have to find the deflection at the tip for all three cases and the slope at the tip for all three cases and add them up to be zero. So we get MB and RB. And the alternative approach is I remove the moment. I assume that MA and MB are redundant. So I convert it into a simply supported beam, primary structure. Then the secondary structure is a simply supported beam with moment here. Another is a simply supported beam with a moment here. And my compatibility conditions will be theta A is 0 and theta B is 0. That is the slope at A and B both have to be 0. So we get it. For a plop cantilever, we can just We have already seen what a prop cantilever we do. We can convert it into a cantilever or a simply supported beam, and so on. So these are all examples. You have the slides uploaded. You can get look into those. Are there any questions?
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes. Good evening.
Ma'am, please explain the force displacement method. One second. Slide number 6 or 7, ma'am.
Oh, okay. 6 or 7. 6 or 7 is a
Okay.
structural indeterminacy. Tell me to stop.
I'm not to break it long. Yes, yes, this slide, this slide.
This slide.
Yes.
Okay, so now that we have seen an example of the cantilever beam, how we top cantilever, how we solve using force method, you can understand these that unknowns are taken as internal member forces or reactions. What we did here, what we did for a prop cantilever was, I assume that the vertical force, the vertical reaction provided by the roller support is an unknown. Named it RB and removed it from the structure. So this is the first step. And the second step is to find the unknown compatibility conditions are written. So the compatibility conditions we wrote in that cantilever beam is that the displacement at the tip due to the original loading plus the displacement at the tip due to that RB, which I am assuming to be supplied separately, is zero. And that compatibility condition exists because there was actually a roller at B, and I know that the net vertical displacement at any point where a roller support exists has to be zero. Do you get that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. So that is the second step. And the number of equations needed is equal to degree of static indeterminacy, which is what we did for prop cantilever. It is 1 degree indeterminate, so there was one equation. And for that fixed beam, there were it was 2 degree indeterminate, so we needed two equations. We needed two equations, like one was that net deflection at B should be zero, and the net slope at B should be zero. So that is the concept of the force method. We start out by taking some forces as unknowns, we impose some compatibility conditions, and we find out those forces, the unknown forces, and then I can treat it as a determinate structure. Once I have the RB reaction at B, I can just treat it as a cantilever beam with a separate tip applied force. So now
Okay.
once I can treat it as a determinate structure, I can do all the things I have done before, like find out the BMD, SFD, find out the deflection profile. That is fine.
Yes, yes, yes.
So this is the force method approach, and the displacement method approach actually approaches it from the opposite way. This I won't go into the details now because in the later weeks we will do that. Like unless you have seen an example, it is difficult to understand exactly. But you will see that all these steps are complemented here. Here in force method we took some unknown reactions as some reactions as unknown. Here we take some displacements at unknown as unknowns. We start
That
out
is MDM. That just like MDM, moment distribution method. That
exactly,
stiffness,
exactly, exactly.
thickness factor.
Exactly,
Okay.
stiffness approach, stiffness matrix method. We say that these joint displacements are unknowns, and then to
Yes.
find the joint displacements, I impose some equilibrium conditions. Unlike here, we impose compatibility conditions. Here, we will impose equilibrium conditions, and once I have solved those joint displacements, I will have some other conditions to find out the forces in the structure, and
Unknown
find
forces, unknown moments. Yes.
yes, unknown moments or unknown forces.
Yes,
And
yes,
then I
yes.
will again treat it as a determinate structure, and I will have all the information I want about it.
Ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Is that
And ma'am,
fine?
static determinacy and indeterminacies in their slide now.
Yes.
Static determinacy.
Whatever we have done so far is static indeterminacy. Static indeterminacy is the number of reactions minus number of equations of equilibrium. Kinematic indeterminacy has to do with the degrees of freedom, which we will look at that in the beginning of week 10 when we go into the displacement methods.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay.
There is a this in this class, week number 7. There is static determinacy, no, ma'am?
Yes, yes, it is only static indeterminacy. When we are looking at force methods, it is only static indeterminacy. When it is related to the number of forces, number of support reactions, equilibrium, when all of these are considered, that it's only static indeterminacy.
Okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Okay then. If not, I end the class. Next week we look at method of consistent deformation in the context of trusses.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for attending. See you next Tuesday.